In This Corner, the podcast, season 3. I think we're episode 28. Boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, boxing's greatest memories and moments. But beginning today, it's sports and entertainment at its best and with its best. And what do I mean by that? Well, of course, with us, as always, is boxing writer, author, CompuBox counter, historian Lee Groves. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah, I do, actually. And that's because in a previous life, you had a radio show called Smitty Sports Talk. And even with your TV show In This Corner, you interviewed a wide variety of athletes and celebrities. It wasn't just limited to boxing. So let's go through just some of the names that you spoke with during that time. Let's say in baseball.
Gosh, baseball, I would say the names that come to mind, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays I had on.
Two of the best of all time. How about football?
How about Jimmy Brown and the crew cut high top Johnny Unitas?
Arguably the greatest quarterback ever and the greatest running back ever. Pretty good as well. Basketball.
James Worthy used to be on with me all the time. And my first guest ever when my show went national was Walt Clyde Frazier.
Wow, great.
Who loved boxing, by the way.
Oh, terrific. Hockey.
Phil Esposito, Brendan Shanahan.
Terrific players. Golf.
Supermex, Lee Trevino, and Nick Price used to be a regular on the radio show.
Oh, terrific. Tennis.
How about Bjorn Borg and Jimmy Connors?
Fantastic era. That's when I started watching the game. Track and field.
Yeah, I did a live remotes with Butch Reynolds and Carl Lewis.
Two of the best. Horse racing.
D. Wayne Lucas was on, and Pat Day was on a number of times with me, and he was a pretty damn good jockey. I might actually be bigger than Pat Day too, in stature.
So we covered the sports spectrum. Now we'll talk. How about people outside of athletics? You interviewed singers, for example.
Well, my friend Jeffrey Osborne was on when we go to TV. Mr. T used to be a regular and had people on like Robert De Niro and Sylvester Stallone, Samuel L. Jackson, and even with other broadcasters. And I know you love this guy. I had Bob Costas used to be on quite a bit, Brent Musburger, and even a guy that I grew up listening to made an appearance or two on my radio show, and he had a mic like this, Larry King.
Well, the point is that going beyond boxing, this isn't Smitty's first rodeo. And from time to time on the show, you're going to get a glimpse of that. As for me, I do know boxing. This is kind of new for me, but I hope to learn a lot and to learn about all sorts of other different people.
Well, you're a great researcher, and you're not going to have to dig too far for who's up first. Sports and entertainment at its best, with its best. Coming up, you'll find out. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Self-high five. DDP. Too cool.
Back on In This Corner, the podcast, and the theme music speaks for itself as we are joined by iconic wrestling manager, former WCW heavyweight champion, WWE Hall of Famer, and now the man and creator behind DDP Yoga. More importantly to me, my longtime friend, Diamond Dallas Page. How you doing, my friend?
Unstoppable, bro. 67 years young and just holding back the hands of time, bro. Holding them back.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I'm going to say something. We're coming up in another couple of years. It'll be 40 years that we've known each other.
We don't look a day over 45, do we?
No.
And if people do your DDP Yoga now, they'll remain 45. We'll get into that. We're going to definitely talk about it because your passion and what you're doing with that is just amazing. You're saving people's lives, and then there's even tie into boxings, and we'll get to that. But I want to go back even before we met. Point Pleasant, New Jersey is where it all began for you. What in your childhood would lay the foundation for your confidence, your charisma, your resiliency? Something had to be going on in early life that made this all possible.
I don't know about that, Smitty. I think it was more work ethic than anything. And it came out of, like, when I was a kid, I had ADD and dyslexia. So, at 30 years old, I was reading at a third grade level. So as a kid, I didn't know. I just thought I couldn't read. No one knew what ADD or dyslexia was. They just thought we were stupid. So, getting through, I never let anybody know I couldn't read, but if I read out loud, you knew. So as a kid growing up, I'd friggin' pull the girl's hair in front of me to get kicked out of class before it came to me. Because I tried it in the beginning and all the kids start laughing at you, So it let me know, okay, as time goes on, I'm sure I'll get better. But I didn't. So I really learned out of probably survival, quid pro quo. Didn't know it was called that back then, but I'll do this for you if you do this for me, and but where I got my confidence was sports. And in the beginning, the only sport I loved was football, and I really liked hockey too. But football, when I was in sixth grade, I was starting with the seventh and eighth graders both ways, defensive end and center. Seventh grade, I was killing it, man. I couldn't wait to come back that last year for Pop Warner football and then go to play high school, because to me, in my mind, I was going to be playing defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys. That's how I saw my life as a kid. Like, sports became my thing. And then one morning I was going to catch the bus, and me and my buddy Stan, we would get the bus like on the way to pick up all the kids. So we were out on the highway, and bottom line is, one day, get a little something in my throat here. Just pause 1 second, Smitty.
In This Corner, the podcast with DDP Diamond Dallas Page. When you talk as much as he does, and when we get into what he's doing with the DDP Yoga, you'll see why that voice can get burnt out. I know mine does as well, as he returns.
What it was literally, I'm drinking a shake here, and it's got everything you can imagine in it. And someone was getting caught in my throat. So the bottom line is we're going to catch the bus. It's snowing that day. And my grandmother wanted me to put on those big galoshes boots you wore that went up halfway up your calf. And I was so mad. I tied those stickers so tight. I was so pissed off. And I was running late to catch the bus, so I could see it in the distance. And I said, Stan, hold the bus. I'm going to get some candy. And I walked right out in front of a car. And it hit my front right leg. My face bounced off the hood. and I flew 42 feet from the point of impact. And the boots were there on the ground. That's how hard I got hit. And back then, there was no such thing as rehab. You know, I had to have a full body cast, not body cast, but leg cast from my ankle to the top of my quad. The doctor wouldn't let me play football or hockey anymore. And the only sports that he would let me play, because they were considered non-contact, was baseball, which of course is not, but basketball. They would let me play that. They never really, I guess the guy who was a doctor didn't really realize all the jumping and jumping and twisting and jumping and twisting and jumping and, you know, all that beat up your knees even more than football did. But what had happened was I didn't make the team in 7th grade, but I didn't care because I was a football player. But I figured I'd go out for basketball because I was big. And I didn't make a team. I didn't care. Made me dislike basketball even more. But that next year, when I couldn't play football and all I could play was basketball, I cared. I wanted to make that team. So I'm used to, at that point in my life, getting something like that. Okay, I just got to practice a couple times. I'll be good. I didn't, and I sucked. And I sat on the bench that year. And it taught me probably one of my biggest lessons. That summer, I swore that would never happen to me. From the moment that basketball season ended, I was playing basketball. If I wasn't in school, if I wasn't having to work, I was playing basketball. And that summer, I played all day, every day. And that, you know, in the beginning, I didn't get picked. So, you know, to play. So basketball is great because you can play by yourself. And today you look at all these kids today with their dribbling drills and all their shooting drills. Like, it's unbelievable, the athlete of today. But back then, it was just me shooting hooks and layups and foul shots and trying to become a better player. And eventually I did get picked. And eventually, you know, that summer, I would improve enough to be starting on our freshman team. And we went 15-0. Sophomore year, I started varsity. And I made a really good name for myself in that state of New Jersey playing basketball. And what it taught me was work ethic equaled results. And through work ethic and really getting better, so now I'm picking the teams, it gives you a different level of confidence.
Yeah.
And I think confidence is everything. You know, natural charisma, obviously I had that no matter what. But, you know, working in the nightclubs, like when you're running, like when we met, I was running a place called Norma Jean's Dance Club. I was 30 years old, 30 years old at the time. And, man, it was all about the booze, the broads, and the partying to me, man. I was just having fun. And one day, I'm going to lead into the story of how we met. A guy comes in to my club, which, you had held 1,000 people on the weekend. We had 7 bars. At any point in time on the weekends or Wednesday, there was 15 bartenders working. The place was jamming. It was so hot. I used to say it was the hottest spot to hit Southwest Florida since the sun. That was one of the slogans, that I came up with. And we were the hottest thing from Tampa to Cuba, and everything in between. And they came in and they wanted to do a story around The Voice. And I was like, what do you mean The Voice? They said, well, the guy who does your commercials, is that you? I said, yeah, it is. But I would, you might throw in, like, oh, yeah, hot legs. $1,000 in cash and prizes. Oh, yeah, dig it. I might throw in Randy Savage's voice or Hulkster or Jesse Ventura or whoever was hot at the time. And that was because these guys had come in my club. Like Jake the Snake Roberts came in my club. The $1 Million Man. I was looking for this picture the other day, and I can't find it. It's a picture of Luke, the bushwhacker.
Oh, they had Krabby Bill's down there. They had a Krabby Bill's joint down there in Southwest
Tampa.
Florida.
Yep. Until here it is. Luke put this picture up on his Facebook, and he said, "That's a $1 million man, Ted DiBiase." There, he put DDP before he was DDP. Like, that's how much I knew him. Later that night, me and Ted DiBiase doing upside down tequila shooters in the pink Cadillac room. It was so
I
funny.
remember that room vaguely.
Ted, yeah, vaguely. Ted and his wife Mel came here to train with me. I tried to get Ted to do DDP yoga for 20 years, and I could never get him to do it. But as he got older and more beat up, he finally called me and he said, "D," he goes, "I'm in. I gotta come. Can I bring Melanie too? I want to spend a week with you. I want to get engrossed with the whole DDP yoga thing." And the very first night, he was talking about that story because that was the first night we ever met. And he talks about the upside down tequila shooters. Like, I couldn't believe he remembered it. So while he was telling the story, I walked out of my office, grabbed that picture, and said, "You mean these shooters of tequila?" It was a fun time. Those guys coming in, the very first guy to come in, this is from 1992, but this is me and Jake the Snake Roberts. And Jake, you see, when I tried wrestling the first time, I was 23. And like I said, I was horrible. I had 3 matches. I hurt the same knee I got hit by the car. And I was only wrestling like once or twice a week. And then I did 3 different matches. In the third match, I went over the top rope, and I came down on that bad right knee. And the doctor said, take another month off or so, then go back and do that crazy shit you're doing. And I ended up getting my first chance to run my first nightclub. I was 23 years old. It was a little rock and roll bar. And the booze, the bras, and the party took me in a different direction. And I forgot about the goal of being a wrestler. And then WrestleMania, that was in 1979. Then I guess it's 1980, going in 1980. And then about 83 or 4, whatever it was, Vince does WrestleMania. And I'm still watching wrestling occasionally at that point. But when he did that, I was so mad at myself that I didn't pay my dues, that I didn't stick with that goal, that dream I knew I was supposed to be a part of. I stopped watching wrestling completely. And then one night I was clicking the channels, and up pops, this just reminded me, seeing that picture of Jake, up pops Jake the Snake. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And he's got a bag over his shoulder. Man, Jake had swag before anybody. Just the way, Muhammad Ali had his own level of swag with Joe. But in wrestling, that kind of guy didn't really exist yet, especially a guy who would become the first anti-hero. And I watched him in the ring, and I couldn't see through his shit. Like, I couldn't see what was a work and what wasn't. And then he cut the promo, and I was like, boom, I'm a Jake the Snake Roberts fan. And long story short, what ends up happening out of that is he rolls in my club one night. And man, you know me, when I got on a roll like that, we got piss-eyed drunk and had a great time. But he realized I wasn't going to charge him anything. I was going to take care of him. So if you worked Tampa one night in the WWF back then and worked Miami the next, we know that's 300 miles. Well, Fort Myers is really close, right in the middle of that.
Yep.
So Jake pulled in one night. We ended up having a good time. He told the Bushwhackers and Ted DiBiase, and next thing you know, the other boys are dropping in there. So when Kevin tells me that they want to do a story on The Voice, he didn't know if it was Macho doing the little wraparounds, or he didn't know if it was Jake or Hulk, because everybody had seen the boys in the club. And it wasn't once, it was numerous times. And that got my wheels turning. And one night I was, as a general manager, you walk around and you get all the money, for all the bartenders, and I'm just waiting for Smokey to give me his drawer, and DJ Johnny M is playing. This is after hours. For some reason, he's playing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" video, and in that video is Captain Lou Albano.
Yeah,
and I'm watching it, and I just say to myself, not to anyone else but me, rock and wrestling, I should have been a part of that. And I take, now we're all back in my big ass office that we had back there when Kurt was there and Tony and Bobby.
yeah.
It was a big ass office we had, and that's where everybody would come and count their money. And in walks Smokey, and he said, "Big J, what do you mean rock and wrestling? You should have been a part of that." I said, "You heard that?" He said, "Yeah, I heard you say it to yourself."
Mhm.
I said, "Well, I tried it when I was a kid." He goes, "What? You were a wrestler?" I go, "I wouldn't say that. I had 3 matches. I sucked. I hurt my knee." He goes, "What was your name?" At the time, it was Handsome Dallas Page. And he went, "Hoo, you can forget about using that gimmick anymore." And everybody laughed, And it just, it was fate. It was.
There are no coincidences. There are
no
coincidence. We got to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and that'll set up for the story of when I first got to know Diamond Dallas Page. We'll do that after you see this.
I got 2 options. Option 1, I can accept defeat. Option 2, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back on In This Corner, the podcast with it's just so refreshing and rewarding to talk to Diamond Dallas Page, because the embryonic stages for him and I weren't exactly as they are now, as he will continue to tell the story.
So I can't get it out of my head. And there's a blotter pad in front of me that, the days of the month. And I just start writing on it. And I figure in my brain, I'm thinking, and I write down Diamond Dallas Page. And then I write the Diamond Exchange. And I say to everybody, we're all drinking and doing Goldschlager back then. That'll put you right at the end of the 80s, 1987. and at that point, I say, I'm too old to be a wrestler. I was 31 and a half. And I said, but I could be a manager. What if, I said, Jimmy Hart has the Hart Foundation. What if I was Diamond Dallas Page and I'd had the Diamond Exchange for wrestlers? Woo! Shot, drink. Now we're getting shit-faced. At some point, I start thinking to myself, and I write down, and I go, there's no really good, like really hot-looking women in wrestling. And one guy goes, "Oh, Miss Elizabeth." I go, "No, she's gorgeous, but she's girl next door hot." I'm talking about, what if I had a whole stable of the ladies and I called them Diamond Dolls and they were stripper hot? And Smokey goes, "Ooh, that'll be a stretch." Because back then, I was Diamond Dallas Page, and you saw it. The bottom line is, I create. At the end of the night, we're all cashing out, everybody's walking out, and I look down, I go, "Can you imagine if because back then I wore leopard skin jackets, zebra skin boots, I look like this guy right here in the club. I had holes in my jeans in 1987, wearing rhinestone ties, sequin jacket, leather. I've worn crazy shit. I said, can you imagine if I ever had a reason to dress like this? I said, Diamond Dallas Page, manager of champions, the Diamond Exchange, and having B-A-double-D, bad Diamond Dallas walk me to the ring. I go, that's what I said. That'll be B-A-double-D bad. Yeah. So the bottom line is, they said, where does the voice come from? And I'm sitting in my desk where I wrote that night we were all drinking. And I look down and I see Diamond Dallas Page, the Diamond Exchange, the Diamond Dallas. Now, there's a white pair of sunglasses there. And if they're not there, I don't know if I do this, but they are there. So I put them on like a mask. And I say, the voice comes from Diamond Dallas Page, Daddy. I was born to be a professional wrestling manager. It's big, it's bad, it's Norma Jean's voice. The bottom line is, the next week, that thing plays. And the next day, I'm in my office during the day, which I never am because I'm the general manager. I come in at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'm the host. I don't really do the daytime work, but I am there that day. And I'm in my office with Tony and Kurt and a couple other guys. And Judy from the front desk says, Paige, there's a guy on the phone for you who wants Diamond Dallas Page. I pick up the phone. I go, fuck you, Smokey. And I hang up the phone. And next thing I know, Judy calls me back, on the monitor. And she says, that wasn't Smokey. His name's Smitty. And he's got a sports talk show. And he wants to talk to you. Who is this? And then Smitty tells me he's got this show. And normally, he does boxing, but once a month he's going to do wrestling. I go, bro, I can't do it. He goes, why can't you? I heard you. You'll be great. I go, no, I don't really do it. I was just making that shit up. I go, it's just in my head. He goes, who cares? It's radio. And then he says, which really flipped me out. He said, I'm going to have Captain Lou Albano on the show. And I said, you're going to have the captain on? He's like, yes. I go, do I get to talk to him? He goes, yes, you're my resident expert. I go, I'm in. Mm-hmm. And we went on that show.
We added Sergeant Slaughter was on that show too.
No, the next one. Oh. That was the next one. Because you had me come back for the next one. And both of those guys were so good to me.
Yeah.
And afterwards, me and Smitty went out for drinks, and we're sitting there and he says, you really got to do something with this Diamond Dallas Page thing. I'm like, do what? I go, it's Fort Myers. There's not even any wrestling here. Once in a blue moon, WWE will go to the, what was that called? Lee Civic Center. Yeah. I go, dude, there's no wrestling here. He goes, yeah, but you really got something. You should make like a videotape. I go, a videotape of what? And he goes, well, I've got this friend. He said his name was Rob Russin. He used to be a boxing promoter. He said, but now he's promoting for the AWA up in the Midwest. You should make a videotape. I go, Smitty, of what? He goes, you're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. I'm going to get you his address. So the bottom line is he got me his address, and I made this videos with 3 different guys who were bouncers for me. And I make this videotape, and I bring a buddy of mine in who's got great pipes. He's a radio dude who loves wrestling, and you might see him on an independent show here and there. And he's the guy interviewing me and a guy I called Big Bad John. And the next guy I brought up was this guy named Rock Hard Rick. And the last guy I brought up was this midget or little person, and his name was Ted E. Bear, and he came out with the Diamond Dolls. Yeah. So I make that tape up, and I send it to Rob Russin. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Rob Russin. And I'm like, hello. He's like, hey, Diamond Dallas Page there. This is Rob Russin from the AWA. And I almost shit my pants, man. I was just like, and I remember this reverend saying to me, this all goes through my head so fast. The quickest way to get there is to act like you've already been there. And I said, hey, Rob, you got DP. What's up? And he says, we saw your tape and we like what we've seen. We want to bring you and your boys in for a tryout to Vegas, where Smitty is right now. Want to bring you and your boys into Vegas for a tryout. But we've got one question. Everybody likes your shtick, but no one's ever really heard of you. Where are you guys working at? Rob, the truth is, none of those guys can wrestle. He's like, what? Why would you send the tape? I'm like, well, bro, it's like a secret society. Nobody can figure out how to get in. I said, but if you want to use these guys to get them in training, they're ready to go train right now, and then I could manage them. Or if you got some guys that need a mouthpiece, I mean, I'm your guy. Hello, Rob? Don't call us, we'll call you. This is God's work to me, because 2 weeks later, a guy who went by Paulie Dangerously, better known today as Paul Heyman, left the AWA and went to what was the NWA. It was about to become WCW. And it left a huge void for a young guy that could talk. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I get a call from, this time, the promoter, Vern Gagne. His son, Greg Gagne, called me and said, bring all those crazy clothes you wear and a couple of those hot diamond dolls. We're going to give you an audition. And next thing you know, I'm on the AWA. And what was really funny to me, I never told anybody, because you never know if it's ever going to be seen or not, you know? And one of my best friends growing up in high school, still one of my best friends today, Kenny Cleese, he's in his house. Now, this would go on at 12 o'clock on a Saturday night. So he's in his house and he had fallen asleep watching ESPN and he heard my voice. And Dave's like, Paige, hey, what? Pam. And he looks at it and he sees me on TV. He's like, holy shit. I never told him. And now he sees me for the first time on AWA, on ESPN. And that's how it started. But Smitty was obviously very instrumental in that happening.
Yeah, I just saw a situation where, you know, I felt that you had those ingredients, that it factor. You also had the confidence. And when I remember when you asked me, well, what do? I just said, just do what you do. Just be yourself. And I remember talking to Lou and talking to Sergeant Slaughter and saying, and I remember what made me feel so good is after the show, I had conversations with both of them. And they both thought, well, they didn't see you. They couldn't see. It was just radio. But they said, he's got that it factor. And the it factor turned into Diamond Dallas Page. More with DDP, and we're going to talk DDP Yoga right after this.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back on In This Corner of the podcast and chatting with wrestling legend Diamond Dallas Page as I flip to Lee Groves.
Well, you started out as a manager, but then when you went over to WCW, you were making a mark as a manager there. And it would have been very easy for you to remain in that role. But what prompted you to make the move toward becoming an in-ring performer?
Well, more than anything, necessity to be able to hold on to the dream, because that wasn't my choice. Actually, it was Magnum TA pulled me into an office on a TV day when I'm managing these guys right here, the fabulous Freebirds, Hall of Famers. He brought me in and he said, "Listen, D, Dusty, who brought me in, who's my mentor, my brother. Here's a great picture of me and Dusty in 1989 at the Lee Civic Center. We had gone to see Willie Nelson, and Dusty got up to sing with him and never got off the stage. But he said Dusty didn't have the heart to do this. He said, we love what you're doing in production, behind the scenes, right? We love what you're doing with, it was a 4th-string color commentator with Eric Bischoff at the time. He said, we love what you're doing there. Eventually, we'll definitely see you on the main show. He goes, but we can't let you manage anymore. And I was like, why? What did I do wrong? He said, honestly, nothing. I go, then why am I losing the spot? He goes, well, it's you. I go, what do you mean me? He's like, the hair, the bling, the dolls, the rap. It's like no one's paying attention to the wrestlers when you're out there. Like you suck it all up. He said, it's not your fault. He said, what we should have done was put you in a pair of tights and boots and see if you could do this. Now, I went down hard when that happened. But within an hour, like everybody gets depressed, everybody goes down. But within an hour, I had already changed the story I was telling myself, because I had 7 months left on my contract. And I'd already seen guys down at the power plant training. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So I already got this in my head. So I go to the Freebirds. I'm walking up to the ring for the last time ever. And those guys, they were like brothers to me, and they still are. But they ribbed me so hard. Oh, my God. They would rib the shit out of me all the time. But this day, they came at me with such empathy, and they felt bad for me. And when they had that attitude, which kind of shocked me, I said, hey, not a big deal, bro. I know what I'm doing. I got 7 months left of my contract. I'm going to become a professional wrestler. And they looked at each other and looked out back at me and literally burst out laughing. They thought it was the funniest thing they ever heard. Michael fell on the ground laughing so hard. I gave both the "you're number one" sign, and I said, I'll see you boys in the ring. And I started my journey. I was at the power plant the next day, and I got to be honest, I can't tell you how many times my body hit that cold. It was in a warehouse with 5 rings and all these young guys. The oldest guy was 27. I'm 35 and a half. And I can't tell you how many times my body hit that mat. And I thought to myself, man, this fake stuff hurts like hell. I mean, it hurt, man. I can't tell you how many times my body hit that mat over those next 3 to 6 months. And I'd hit that mat and go, man, are you sure you really want to do this? That's when I learned. It was like when I started playing basketball when I was a kid. I sucked, but I became one of the best in the state. I wasn't going to play in the NBA, but for my level, I was as good as you could be. And it didn't start out like that. It took work ethic and focus and discipline. And, the story I told myself is when I asked myself, are you sure you really want to do this? It was yes. And every single time I would say, I'm going to be a main event performer. I'm going to headline main event pay-per-views. I am going to be one of the top names in the business. That was the only story when I hit that wall. because I don't believe God puts walls in front of us to keep us out. I believe God puts walls in front of us to show us how much we really want it. And I just kept coming, man. And I wasn't trying to prove them wrong. I was trying to prove me right.
That's a tremendous story. You know, it's one thing to start wrestling, but it's another thing altogether to get accepted by the locker room.
Yeah.
How did you go about gaining that acceptance, and who were the people that first gave you that sign that, hey, we like what you're doing?
Not directly out of the locker room, but it started with the first guy when I went to the power plant. It was a guy named Jody Hamilton. He went by the Assassin, and he drew huge money for 25 years on top. He ran that power plant. And at one point he said, you know, you keep doing what you're doing, you have the ability to maybe actually make it in this business. The next guy would be Jake. Now, Jake knows me from the nightclub days, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Jake came in to WCW when he left WWF to work with Sting and Rude. And the bottom line is, the first place he came, because he was from Georgia, that's where he lived, that's where he made his home. He went down to the power plant. And I'm in the ring working with guys. And I hear Paige. And I look over my shoulder. I go, Jake. I'd seen him in years at this point. He's like, I thought that was you. You know, like when you know somebody from a certain spot, you don't really picture to see him as a wrestler on TV later, you know, or as a manager. But he's seen me from time to time. He's like, God damn, that looks so much like that fucking nightclub promoter, you know? And we bonded. Me and Kevin Nash were tag teaming at the time, the bottom of the card. And we just wanted to friggin' be around Yoda. And there was a point in time where I tear my rotator cuff. Jake had already left the company because he had a big blow off with Bill Watts, who didn't want to pay him what contract he was supposed to make. And Jake didn't sign the contract yet. So he basically told Bill, you know, go screw yourself. And I had no idea how to get a hold of Jake because we didn't have cell phones back then. And bottom line is, I tore my rotator cuff after 9 months of wrestling. Actually, it was whatever it was right before my contract was up to be done. And because I think I signed another contract when I went in. So I wrestled for 9 months and I had 3 months to come back, but they weren't going to re-sign me. And Jake came and gave me a call. He gave me a call, came to my house, and we talked. And, you know, basically I let him, he was broken up with his wife, Cheryl, at the time. And he ended up moving in with me and my wife at that time, Kimberly. And he stayed with us for 3 months. I learned so much from him. He stayed with me for 3 months until he lost his 12-foot-long black cobra in the house. And Kim's like, he's got to go. But bottom line is that Jake was the first guy. He was putting me over to a promoter. And when he hung up the phone, I go, Jake, you can't put me over like that, bro. I go, I can't deliver that. And he's like, are you serious? He's like, D, you can already do all the moves. You just need to get refined. Like, you already do more shit than I do. He goes, you have the potential, if you keep working the way you're working, to be one of the top guys in this business.
It's almost like he told you what I was telling you about yourself, you know, before you maybe realized it.
Yeah, for sure. Jake, as a matter of fact, just walked in because we're going to work and when we're done with this. But bottom line is that he was the first guy to ever tell me, like, you have the potential, you know, to really be somebody in this business. And when you have someone like Jake the Snake Roberts telling you that, like, you know, it gives you an inner confidence. And then the next guy was years later. I was on the road when Hulk came into the company, and after my match, I came through the curtain, and we're in Berlin at the time, and he grabs me and he pulls me over, and he goes, "How you doing it?" I'm like, how am I doing what? He's like, how are you getting so much better? I go, wow, thanks, Hulk. And he said, because I don't see you on TV that often, but when I do, you come up with something new I haven't seen in a while, and you get the people involved. He said, how are you getting so much better? And then he says, this is what they're doing with you, right? They're putting you on the road like this so you can train and and learn your craft. I said, Hulk, I've been on the road in 4 months. He's like, what? He goes, how are you getting so much better? I said, well, I go down to power plant and I teach the young guys. And I figured out, like, the more I teach them, there's times I'm teaching them, I'm learning shit.
So, yeah.
And, and it just, I guess I'm getting better. I go, I appreciate this, man. He goes, listen, it's not this year or next year, the year after. He said, but somewhere down the line, you have the ability to draw huge money with me. And he walked away. And all I could think about, here's the guy who's only been in here like a couple of months. And he walks up to me and says that, like, you're watching my matches? Like, holy shit, And, friggin' 4 years later, he's on The Tonight Show with Dennis Rodman and Jay Leno, and me and Malone walk in from the wings, throw down the chairs, throw up diamond cutter signs, and shoot our angle on The Tonight Show.
Yeah.
On the second biggest pay-per-view in WCW's history.
Yeah.
So
listen, before we get in, Lee, ask your, I'm editing you all in real time, Lee. Ask your diamond cutter question, then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back, and we're going to end this with where I want to end it, because it's so important, what he's doing with DDP Yoga. So ask that question quickly, Lee, and then we'll go to break and come back and wrap it up with DDP Yoga now.
Yeah, one of the most important aspects of character development is the finishing move. What is the finishing move? And with you, it was the diamond cutter, similar to the RKO used by Randy Orton. But what was the origin story behind the move, and how did that develop?
Well, the diamond cutter was originally given to me by Johnny Ace. All he would do is grab his opponent by the neck, and he'd make the peace sign, and he'd kick out. He was doing it in Japan. And he said, I got a finish you might want to use, when he was laying over in Atlanta before he went to Japan. We went down to power plant. We started playing. Triple H was there that day. Billy Kidman. Canyon was there. And so Regal was also there. And Regal said, if you're going to do it, grab the cravat so that it's a shoot hold. And he put me in that fucker, and I realized that's a shoot hold. Maybe Brock Lesnar can get out of it, but or the Big Show. But if I put that fucker on you and I'm in front of people, you're going whether you want to go or not. So that was the original of it, and it just came with a running and pounce, and flop. But you got to remember, my main guy is Jake Snake Roberts. He's the one who got me back into watching wrestling. He came in my club. We became best friends, and became best friends. And he was my mentor, him and Dusty. So what did I watch? There was one point in time we were on the road, and some guy gave Jake 40 VHSs, 80 hours of just Jake Roberts. He didn't want them. He gave them to me. You don't think I watched those fuckers? I watched everything. There were certain matches I pulled out, like him and DiBiase at the Garden, which was unbelievable. But the instantaneousness of the DDT, one day, and I would take my tapes to Jake because he was back with Cheryl at the time, and I'd come and see him, and he'd play the tapes and watch them. And what'd you do that for? What were you thinking? Whatever, like there. Okay, that was okay. And then when I hit that diamond cutter out of nowhere for the first time ever, he just looked at me, smiled, and went, now you're getting it. Because he made me figure shit out. He wouldn't just tell me what to do. And that was a really saving blessing for me too. So long story short, the diamond cutter, when I started taking it out of nowhere, started getting a reaction. And then one day, this kid, Rod Reeves, who never made it, throws up this in the power plant when I'm leaving the power plant. He said, DDP, you ever think about doing that before you do the diamond cutter? And I said, diamond defense. We were both basketball players, right? And I said, yeah, that might work. Now, one of the things that a lot of people know, a lot of people don't know, is I filmed every match I ever had. Now, I always overtaped them, which really bums me out because there was so much brilliance behind the camera. Stone Cold Steve Austin doing play-by-play and like he's Gordon Soley and Nash and Mick Foley and Raven and Regal and all this magic. And like an idiot, I taped over it every night. But every night I'd watch this. I'd watch it. And every night that from then on, I would throw that up before I'd act like I was going to do the diamond cutter or was going to actually get the diamond cutter in. And nobody did it. Like probably 10 nights in a row. But because I filmed every match, I start to see a father and a daughter start to do this because I would throw it up, bang, and I'd bring it right back down. They came up, and when I went bang, they brought it right back down. I went, oh. And that next time on TV, I threw it up and I held one Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, bang. I'll watch that back, easily 100 people. And then it just starts to get momentum because they finally gave me a bullshit push. But they gave me a push to let me win the Lord of the Rings. So they couldn't beat me for a while. So they let me beat enhancement guys. And if you watch the crowd, the people are jumping. It doesn't happen right away. Once this gets over and they have a way to communicate with them, man, friggin' people are jumping out of their seats, whole section of buildings throwing up the diamond cutter sign. And without that, we're never talking about me being a Hall of Famer and shit.
Yeah. We're going to go to a break. Yeah. And a funny thing is, I was at the doctor today, and the young nurse, when I mentioned we were going to be taping this, she I guess she's young compared to me. She was in her 40s. First thing she did was she went. And this was a nurse that I had no idea would even. One last break. We'll come back. We're running out of time, but we've got to talk what his passion is all about these days, and that's DDP Yoga. That after one final break. We'll be back.
I got 2 options. Option 1, I can accept defeat. Option 2, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back with Diamond Dallas Page, Lee Groves. We're taking a little a break from pugilism as we talk wrestling, and now we're going to talk about something that really is consuming his life. And if you get involved in it, it will consume your life because of what it can do. I know it's doing something for my pal Butterbean right now. DDP Yoga.
Before I jump in that, I had to finish because I want to get with Lee's last question about the diamond cutter. The greatest, one of my most favorite moments ever, I get a call in 1997, and all I hear is, congratulations. I'm like, Jake, that you? Yeah. Congratulations for what? He said, reinventing the DDT. When you get your mentor tell you that you just reinvented his move, his was the move of the 80s. And this was the move of the 90s and on.
Full circle.
The guys you brought in. Full circle, bro. It was like, that was to me, that was as important as that world title right there, man. That's how important that was to me. So DDP Yoga came out of necessity. My career exploded when I was 40 at the end of being 40, right as I turned 41, I beat Randy Savage in the middle with my finish 6 days after my 41st birthday. So 41, 42, I was on fire. And then I broke my back. Basically, I ruptured the L4 and L5 in the lower part of my back. And I had 3 spine specialists tell me I was never going to wrestle again. Well, I had just signed a multi-million-dollar 3-year deal that if I don't wrestle again, they can cut it after between 3 to 6 months. They could completely eliminate it by 6 months if I didn't go back and wrestle. So, man, I went through a real depression there for not too long, couple of days though, longer than you've ever seen me depressed ever. But at some point, I pulled out of it, and mainly because I had hope. And at the time, Kimberly, who I was married to still, she was like, why don't you do yoga to heal your body? And I got to be honest, I'm the guy who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga especially at 42 years old. And, she bullied me into it. And I was still doing the rehab, but it wasn't really helping me. And I've had rehab. I rehabbed both shoulder surgeries and my left knee surgery. I rehabbed back myself. So I knew a lot about it. Now I was learning about rehab for the back. And I started doing the yoga, but I couldn't do all the moves that Kimberly could do because I was broken. And they didn't have modifications. That's what I pride myself in the most with DDP Yoga. Our workouts, I know some people would think, oh, I can't work out with you, dude. You'll kill me. My workouts start off in bed. Like you tear your ACL. Like I've had a lot of pro players and wrestlers, professionals tear their ACL. They start with the bed. Yeah. And then they sit in a chair, what I call chair force. Then they stand up and hold on to a chair to build strength and balance and help you get up and down. Then you go to beginner to wherever you want, psycho extreme shit if you want. The bottom line is, in less than 3 months, combined yoga, rehab, old school calisthenics, and something I call dynamic resistance. Just think time under tension. Think flexing and engaging, like you're lifting weights or curling dumbbells with no weight. When you flex and engage, every time you flex or engage a muscle, your heart has to beat faster, get the blood to the muscle. So completely by accident, I create a workout that's kick-ass cardio, dramatically increase your flexibility, strengthen your core at a whole different level, all with minimal to zero impact on your joints. In less than 3 months, I was back in the ring. At 42, they said my career's over. At 43, I've got my first world championship. So I knew that it would be a big part of my life forever. I didn't see this back then doing what it's doing. But when I went out to follow my acting career after I retired the first time, I really put so much into that, and I did get a lot of good, fun parts, but it wasn't going to, I wasn't The Rock. I wasn't, I didn't have that timing, or Cena or Batista. Wrestlers weren't seen as really good actors, Ben, because of some of our predecessors. Bottom line is, I couldn't control that, but what I could control was investing my own money in myself. And it would take 8 years and $548,000 before I made a dime. And when I did, it was by helping a disabled veteran. Name was Arthur Borman. And that video has been seen by billions of people. I'm going to leave it with this. I know you don't have much time. Just go to ddpyoga.com and see what we have there. The app that we have isn't just workouts that start off in bed and go to Psycho Extreme. It's cooking shows that's really healthy food that tastes great. Because I don't care how healthy something is. If it don't taste great, I'm not eating it. There is one inspirational video after another.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Focused and moving forward. And the bottom line is, you get 7 days free on the app. Costs you nothing to try it. So if you do it and you're serious, the very first thing you'll see is the list. The very first thing. If you do the list in its entirety, it just won't change your life. It'll help you own your life. And I'll leave you with this. Don't listen to a word I say about my own fucking program. Don't. Go on Facebook. Almost everybody watching this got Facebook. DDP Yoga, one word. That's it. One word. That's not my page. That's the people. It was 5 guys, 2 girls and 3 guys that wanted to help inspire each other and keep them accountable. Now there's 78,000 people on that page.
Yeah.
I dare you to find a more inspiring page that you can go to, that people who are beat up and broken down, to athletes that want to hold back the hands of time and continue to live the dream. It's everything from A to Z and back again.
Yeah, the
all
list
there on
was great.
Facebook.
I went over the list yesterday. I love that line because I always say, write it down, make it happen. I love the line, don't just think it, ink it.
Right.
If you can't take the time to do that. This is such a thing of when the improbable becomes the probable, when the ordinary becomes the extraordinary. You have you. But I'm going to end this with how I ask all the great fighters on my television show in this corner, which is still on the air after 19 years somehow.
Crazy.
How does Diamond Dallas Page want to be remembered as a wrestling person, but more importantly, as a man?
I'll just say, as a man, the guy who gave a fuck. That's exactly who I am.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who gave a fuck. About the boys. I try to help them all. Now these girls are beating themselves up even more than the guys. And they don't have our warrior frame. We were built for warrior, being warriors. Women were built to have babies, and breed. They weren't built for this punishment. But man, these girls today, from wrestling to basketball to soccer, I mean, these women today, wow, they are just. If I pass a basketball game and it's WNBA or college, I'm watching. I'm going to stop and watch for a while. And if they got it going, I'm going to keep watching, because I mean, they're just amazing. But I have so many women that I help in their 40s that are just so beat up, and they weren't anywhere near the athletes that these girls are today, nor am I the athletes of these wrestlers today, because these kids, they're like superheroes, and they're punishing their body at an all-time level.
Yeah,
and they're human beings. Well, so they're all going to pay the price.
I'm going to tell you how I'm going to end it, because we are completely out of time. I'm going to end it with just, I'm so damn proud of what you've accomplished, and you've got a lot more to do. We'll have you on again in the future, but it's great to call you my friend, and we'll end with that. Diamond Dallas Page, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
And to you, Smitty, thank you, dude, for pushing me, because it's exactly what I needed, brother. I love you, man. See ya.
So long, everybody.